1818. A man accused of murder walks free, not because a jury believed him innocent, but because he challenged his accuser to a sword fight. And the court said that was legal, not a metaphor, not a Hollywood invention. A real ruling from a real English court, less than a decade before steam trains existed. And it wasn't even new. That right had been sitting untouched in English law for 600 years. Trial by combat wasn't a myth, a movie trope, or a Dark Ages rumor. It was law, real law. Courts across Europe used to settle murder accusations, land disputes, even treason charges by handing two men weapons and letting God decide who was telling the truth. The loser died. The winner walked. That was the entire justice system. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly how a man legally threatened to kill his way out of a murder charge in 1818. This is War Rituals So Metal They Should Be Myth, where we prove the combat system's history calls exaggeration were real, documented, and worse than the legend. Now here's what most history classes skip. Medieval courts didn't see trial by combat as brutality. They saw it as evidence. The doctrine was called Judicium Dei, Judgment of God. If two men fought and one died, Church and Crown both agreed God had intervened to protect the innocent one. No appeal, no review, the corpse was the verdict. Your innocence wasn't measured in evidence. It was measured in whether your spine was still intact by sundown. This wasn't chaos. It had rules, specific ones. The accused chose the weapons, sword, axe, club, whatever the court allowed, but the accuser could hire a champion, a professional fighter paid to kill you on someone else's behalf, kind of like in John Wick. You didn't get that option if you were accused, you fought yourself. No substitute. The fight happened on consecrated ground, blessed by a priest before either man stepped in. The blessing wasn't decoration, it made the arena a courtroom. Step outside the ring mid-fight, and you were guilty by default. There were time limits too. Some courts gave you until sunset, others until one man couldn't stand. It didn't end at the first blood, it ended at first death, or first surrender. And surrender wasn't a way out, surrender was a confession. Confession meant execution anyway. The only real exit was through the other man's chest. This is War Rituals, the series built on combat systems history tried to pass off as myth. Subscribe, there's a lot more where this came from. Now here's where it turns openly unfair. Wealthy men almost never fought. They hired champions, trained killers whose entire job was standing in a ring for someone else. The champion got paid win or lose. If he won, the man who hired him walked free. If he lost, that man was declared guilty, without ever picking up a weapon himself. The corpse belonged to someone else. Women could demand a champion too, but only if the accused was a man. If a woman herself stood accused, she fought in person, with one modification. The man was buried up to his waist and given a club. She stayed on the surface, armed with a sling and stones. Medieval courts called this balancing the odds. A half-buried man with a stick, that was equal opportunity in the 13th century. The poor got none of this. No champion, no leverage. A farmer accused by a nobleman's hired killer was already dead. The fight was just the paperwork. Every fight ended one of two ways: death or crying craven. Craven was the medieval word for surrender. Say it and the fight stopped, but the court recorded it as a confession, and a confession meant execution anyway. Surrendering in a trial by combat was the same as God finding you guilty. The loser's body was dragged out and displayed. Not buried, displayed. Evidence on view. Proof God had already ruled. The winner walked. No further trial, no further questions. The blood on his hands was his innocence. The dead man was posthumously guilty, and his family lost everything that came with that verdict. Land, title, property, all confiscated. Because according to the court, God had spoken through a sword. There's no version of this that was ever about truth. It was about ending disputes efficiently. Dead men don't appeal. Dead men don't contest land. Dead men don't cause the court any more problems. Which brings us all the way back to that ruling from the top. May 1817, a young woman named Mary Ashford was found dead in Warwickshire. The last person seen with her, a bricklayer named Abraham Thornton. He stood trial for her murder, and a jury acquitted him in minutes. Her brother, William Ashford, refused to accept it. Under an old private right called an appeal of murder, he forced a second case, and Thornton was rearrested. Now this time, Thornton didn't defend himself with an alibi. He invoked an ancient right no one had bothered to repeal: trial by battle. In 1818, the Court of King's Bench ruled the right still stood. Thornton was entitled to demand it. William Ashford was not a fighter. He refused. And under the law, refusing to fight meant dropping the case. Thornton walked free, not proven innocent, just unchallenged. Parliament abolished the right the following year in 1819. 600 years of legal combat, and it only ended because one man actually tried to use it. Trial by combat was never really about God's will. It was power wearing a religious mask. The strong survived because they were strong. Courts called that divine intervention. The truth was simpler. God didn't pick the winner. The muscle did. The money that hired the champion did. Every mosh pit, every circle of bodies around two people fighting while a crowd decides who's still standing, that instinct is old. It didn't start in a venue. It started on consecrated ground with a priest's blessing over a sword. History filed it under footnote. Footnotes don't bleed. This did. For 6 centuries in rings blessed by God, with the dead put on display as proof of a verdict that was never divine at all. It was always just violence with permission, and the permission never came from men who had to fight themselves. Subscribe for more creepy science, dark history, and bizarre facts. Learn hard, live loud. I'll see you in the next one.